Hello and welcome to this episode of Mystic Chat. And today we are going to be talking about demons, ghosts, and monsters, and things that go boo and things like that. Um, my name is Chris. I am a published author, and I am an ordained minister with the Fellowship of the Phoenix. And I would like to introduce my co-host, Ruby Ruse. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. I am Ruby Ruse. I am a small YouTube artist. You can find me on YouTube. My channel is called Fairy Fortunes, where I talk a great deal about, of course, fairies, which could be classified as one of these spirits, ghosts, demons, and monsters that we're talking about on today's show. I'm also on Facebook and Instagrams, and I post a lot of individual content on both of those platforms. So I do hope that you will check me out there. I'm also very excited to be on this program with now 2 published authors. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Luke Babb.
Hi, everybody. I'm Luke. I use they, them pronouns. I am a devotional polytheist who works mainly, but not exclusively, with the Norse and Hellenic pantheons. Gotta say non-exclusive because folks keep sneaking in there in the corners. I write a monthly column for The Wild Hunt. And thank you very much for the plug, Ruby. I am going to be published in the upcoming Loki devotional, Coming from the Truth. So that drops April 1st. And I am super excited to get my hands on a copy. But this is a topic that's really close to my heart, Chris. What were you thinking about, like, demons, ghosts, monsters? Like where we want to start here?
You know, let's just do our formula of wherever we land. So Ruby was the one who actually, well, both Ruby and Laura gave me the idea of this show because on one of the Facebook groups, Ruby had brought up the topic, and then Laura had brought up, oh, since we're in spring, why don't we do spring cleaning? And I thought, how do we combine the two together? So I thought that was like, I think that's going to be clever and fun. Ruby, why don't you?
Well, I can tell you, I'll tell you.
Yeah, but how this even came up?
I'll tell you the story of how this occurred, because it is kind of entertaining. My son is 15 going on 16, and he of course has started entering the dating world, and so his latest lady love is a young Catholic girl, and my son just absolutely enjoys being dramatic, and he loves to tell people that his mother is a witch. And then of course he brings the girls to her home sometimes, not so much now because of the pandemic, but and he loves to show them my house that has various skulls and pentagrams and candles, sometimes black candles and all these other things in my house. And so they just freak out and so this poor young girl was just terrified that I was summoning demons in my house. And I just thought that she was just so scared that I wasn't going to like her and approve of her. And so I had gone to a couple of my favorite groups on Facebook that are for the occult and for paganism. And I had asked for some directions on some further research, because obviously I've conducted extensive research on my own on summoning demons. And so many people were so very helpful that I was able to use my own knowledge and the knowledge that was gifted to me through these Facebook groups. And I gave her a how-to manual on how to summon a demon.
Oh my God, I love it.
I know.
I just tell you, this is why we're friends, for this reason.
Yes.
Stuff I would do myself, like, this is how you do it, because you're not being mean about it. You honestly want her to know. and scare her just a little bit.
Just a little. But I was talking before the show that I find it very interesting, and I hope that our Christian viewers, because we do have a few actually, we do have some Christian mystics out there. So I don't mean to offend anyone of the Christian tradition. But what I have found in my own personal dealings is that I have come across very few people who identify as Christian that have actually fully read the Christian Bible. And there are several references in the Christian Bible regarding demons and spirits and monsters, oh my, and what they are and where they come from and what to do about them. And it seems, and because my research was really coming from a Christian perspective, it was very, and my how-to manual was very Christian focused. And in the Bible, demons are one of two things. They are either fallen angels. There is actually a reference in the Christian Bible about them being angels that sided with Satan against God. And the other reference is that they might be manifestations of sickness. So sickness, madness, these are personifications of what are referred to as demons. And then there's also kind of a third connotation within the Christian texts that anything that is not God, that is supernatural in nature, is a demon and should not be interacted with. So that was really, I based a lot of my research on that. And I also know a little bit about the life of Aleister Crowley, who was very focused on summoning demons. He called them demons. Mm-hmm. And so I did base a little bit. And so I told the young girl in my how-to manual, I gave a little bit of a history of Aleister Crowley because he was so prominent and was, I think, one of the founders of modern occultism, if you will, that I included a little bit of his story, and unfortunately his ending to his story is quite sad, because many people believe that he succumbed to demons, although it's a question on whether they were supernatural beings or in the context of personal demons and demons of sickness and madness. Mm-hmm. Actually, Aleister Crowley had many addictions, including sex addiction and narcotics. Heroin was his drug of choice, and opiates. And he actually died of a heroin overdose. Mm-hmm. Did he succumb to demons, or did he succumb to the sickness, a personification of demons, or really, like we were talking about a little bit before the show, when we summon a demon, are we summoning the shadow of ourselves? Right. In fact, in my how-to manual, I did give my son's girlfriend a little gift. I actually gave her a magic mirror, which I think is an excellent tool for summoning demons and monsters and spirits, oh my. But it's also metaphoric in some ways, because are you actually summoning something else, or are you looking in the mirror?
That's fascinating. I really think that was actually clever and very true. So I want to talk about really quickly, demons and ghosts and monsters and what that is. Every single tradition, every religion, every spiritual idea has some type of a darker force. Now, sometimes it isn't just like, oh, here's the bad guy come to eat you or making you do something awful. Sometimes it just isn't congruent to human life. How I explain it is like this, like the Titans. I mean, everybody remembers who the Titans are, right? So these are the gods, if you will, who created the universe? And if you know anything about astrophysics, well, it was chaotic and hot and supernovas and 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 volcanoes, and then you had the dinosaurs, and then you had this. None of that is congruent to human life at all.
I'm gonna jump in here, Chris. You're talking my language. I gotta make it problematic because, like, yeah, sure. The Titanomachy is a big war. The Olympians fight them off, imprison them, throw them into Tartarus. But we also get Titans who give gifts to humans.
Well, that is true because Hecate is one of the bigger ones. She fought on the side of Zeus, and she has the keys to the three worlds.
Well, I'm also thinking of.
I'm generalizing here.
Right. I'm just saying that I'm not sure that we can say that they're the bad guys. I don't think we can, because like Prometheus and his brother create humans. They make sure that humans get fire.
Right. However, there are some older spirits. Can I use it as an example? There are some primal spirits who are not congruent. Some of them are, you know. That being said, you know, we have to put them somewhere because you can't kill them, and you shouldn't. So they went in Tartarus, or a place in the underworld, or a place far away, you know. And what we don't understand, we often fear, right? So we're like, oh, Fenris, the wolf, you know. And I actually think Fenris is amazing and awesome. And I visit him in the underworld all the time. I think he's amazing. However, if you don't understand those energies and you can understand the purposes, and they do have a purpose, it can seem scary. It can seem like frightening. You know, it's kind of like if you are a hamster, the cat's a scary thing. But most of us here have a cat, and so we think they're cuddly and cute and things like that. It's your perspective, you know. The other thing is that in you know, on Goetic magic, yes, Crowley calls them demons. However, in the original texts and grimoires, they're not called demons; they're called spirits. However, it's very aware of these particular spirits, if summoned, are going to challenge your will, your energy. So the belief in Goetic magic is if you can control your energy, your will, your mind, and you can. I don't think for control. I think work with the spirits with very clear boundaries. It will help you become spiritually more aware, because then that chaotic spirit helps you work on your own chaotic consciousness. And so you can take it to a dark place and like go hurt that person, or you can say, okay, I'm gonna work in tangent with this primal chaotic spirit, whatever, so that I can work on myself, because by learning of these energies, I'm learning about myself. Exactly like Ruby Ruse was saying with the mirror.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too is I was saying that I am known on YouTube and I specialize in fairy spirits, and I often refer to them as spirits, and specifically fairy spirits. Now, when I'm talking about the fairy, a large, broad umbrella term, much like spirit, demon, and monster, I'm not necessarily referring to a being like Tinkerbell. Like a lot of people think of fairies as Tinkerbell, and Tinkerbell is a fairy. I also think that you shouldn't dismiss Tinkerbell, Disney's Tinkerbell, and specifically as being not a very good representation of the fairy, because actually she is. Because if you go back and you watch the original Disney, which was very closely based on the original play, she tries to kill Wendy. She actually very meticulously goes through a very thorough murder plot to kill her, because Wendy is encroaching on her territory and she doesn't like it. And she thinks that she has every reason, and it's noble, to kill the Wendy bird. So actually Tinkerbell is a very good representation of what fairy spirits are. And as I have been, because what I do spiritually, if you will, is I focus on contacting these various spirits, these fairy beings. And from what I have learned from this experience, which, you know, the reality could be that it's all in my head, that I'm making it up, and it's just my subconscious and imagination going wild. That is a possibility. But if I am in fact talking to an intelligence that is different from myself, what they have told me is that in their own languages, there is no words for good and evil, because those concepts do not exist for them. And before we place humans on a higher pedestal above the fairy, I am here to tell you that human beings are also neither good nor evil. We are both and neither simultaneously. All of us, period. And I have a unique perspective because away from my spiritual life, I'm going to out myself on for the world, is I'm actually in law enforcement. And I encounter very troubled and terrifying people, human beings. But I have seen drug dealers come to me weeping with injured animals, that they come to me asking for me to help them with this animal. I have seen hardened drug dealers be loving and caring fathers and mothers to their children. And I have seen men and women who are steadfastly believe that they are good Christians. I have seen them commit crimes and tell me that I should not arrest them, that I'm in the wrong.
I think that's interesting about the your point of view of for good and bad. Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of what we're getting into here, right, is some of the stuff that we talked about in our episode about the devil, which is it's a big word that a lot of people use to mean a lot of different things. So when we say demon, right, there are a lot of people who use that word very specifically for very specific types of spirits. But at the beginning, right, when that word was coined, it's a Greek word that just means spirit.
Yeah.
Right? It just means somebody. And it has gotten this connotation a lot of the time through Christian traditions, right? To mean this very specific, inimical to human life sort of spirit in some way, right? Somebody who does not work well with humanity. I tend to think of it as there are some things that are just predators. Like, we are not top of the food chain. Some things feed off of us the way that we feed off of other animals. That doesn't make them bad. And here's my like controversial opinion. I don't believe there is such a thing as good and evil. Really, I don't think that there are spirits that are good or spirits that are evil. I think that there are spirits who have motivations, and I think that a lot of the time, even working to your truest meaning of the good, right? So for me, like, that's really founded in like taking care of my family, making sure that like I'm living into my values. that's going to cause effects that are bad for other people. And that doesn't make them evil actions, right? I think that there are a very few actions that are actively bad, but I don't think that people are good or bad, and I include spirits in my definitions of people. That said, I also don't necessarily put a good or bad value on a cat eating a mouse, but the mouse sure does. Mouse sure doesn't like it.
Exactly.
Um, and uh, we can go back and forth about motivations and what spirits count as cats all day. Um, but I think that when we're talking about demons, right, a lot of the time what we mean in Western traditions are either specifically biblical Judeo, not hardly even Judeo anymore, specifically Christian demons that have names that you can work with, like specifically, and also Western magical tradition demons. Goetic are some of them. Some of them, a lot of them are taken from Kabbalistic practice originally,
Yeah.
who have very specific jobs. Like if you've seen the movie Hereditary, the
Yes.
demon that they talk about in Hereditary in the texts that he's originally from is a mathematician who rides a camel. If you want to learn about math, you call him and he will teach you about math. He is a mathematician.
That
That is
is
all he
evil.
does. Right, but that's all he does, right? Like that's not he
Gross.
the worst thing that can happen is that you get like
Smart.
really into him and you start not thinking about things that aren't math and camels, right? As opposed to like I've seen instances of people working with for instance, Beelzebub, right, which is a Christian demon,
Right. That's
out of
beautiful
the
text.
right, right, out of the like Paradise Lost tradition, right? Not even in the Bible, really, mostly from Milton's Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
Who they say will give you a lot of like power and influence and money. Probably will. I have seen the people who work with him, and they don't end up well from it. Like there there are spirits that will give you things and take things from you, and like being very careful about those bargains is very important. And then there are spirits who are just here to do a thing,
Right.
and you got to have informed consent when you agree to do it with them.
Well, one of the things how I was taught to work with goetic spirits, the very first thing I was taught is if you are having any, we all have problems every day, but if you're having any great problems, if you're going through depression, if you are taking drugs, which I don't, let me just put that out there now. I may act high. If you have anything that can be exasperated, you cannot be uh, or should not be taught by a reputable teacher. The reason, because what happens is that one of the purposes, just like I said before, is that when you are conjuring a spirit, and this is what they teach in ceremonial magic Kabbalistic thought, is all spirits, as above, so below, as within, so without. All spirits have a connection to your psychic consciousness, which means you 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 can't summon something you don't know anything about, at least subconsciously. That being said, if you have a vice, say it's gambling, and you summon a spirit, the spirit's like, my goal here is to work with you for my benefit and for your benefit. I see your energy. You have a gambling addiction. I'm going to show you this addiction. Bam, you're hardcore gambling. ideally, you should be in the balanced place that says, oh, hold on, this spirit is showing me in my face something I need to fix within myself. However, what happens when you're in the throes of addiction? It's hard. It's really hard, and not to place blame on people who have addictions or anything, but it's really hard. That's why, and the thing is that the reason why people call them demons is because they're not saying they're there. Let me heal you, heal your addiction. They're saying no. Look at it. That's hard. If someone did that to me, he'd be like, Chris, let me show you how you have a problem. I'm gonna be like, no, you know. Um, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. But for halfway through the hour, I want to kind of move
Well,
on
and
a little bit.
what you're talking about begs the question, like,
Yeah.
why would anyone in their right mind want to summon a demon, you know? And so
You can do it for power, though.
this poor 16-year-old girl a magic mirror and instructions on how to do it. And I told her, I said, well, what, you know, there are reasons why you might want to summon these demons. And I think you brought up an excellent point, Chris, that I didn't even think about, is that maybe you invite these spirits, these monsters, to show you how monstrous that you yourself can be. Like,
Yes.
show you your addiction so that you can see how truly awful it can be. But I didn't even think of that. The reasons that I gave this 16-year-old girl why we might want to summon demons is that certainly because I told her quite a deal about Aleister Crowley. And I think one of his goals, and definitely through Thelma, the religion that Crowley founded, and I think also the OTO practices this to some extent, is that if you're summoning a demon or a monster, this disembodied spirit that could be adversarial, if you will, is that it has the potential to lead you towards enlightenment. And certainly by forcing you to look at the horrors of your own addiction, that certainly would be enlightenment. Enlightenment doesn't necessarily mean free of pain.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Another reason that we might want to summon demons is that these can be, certainly in the case of fairy spirits, which would be classified as demons, either in the Greek form that Luke talked about, and that they are just there. They're these entities that we know not exactly what they are, is that they are a part of the world that we live in. So maybe we want to summon these creatures to learn how to be a part of nature rather than being adversarial towards it, because certainly human beings have been kind of adversarial to the environment that we live in. And then another reason is that if demons are in fact an embodiment of suffering, then a good reason to call one and summon one might actually be to learn how to navigate and mitigate that suffering rather than just pretending and failing to ignore the suffering.
So you bring up a really good point. So in tribal culture, shamanism, in some Native American spiritual healing, yes, they believe that disease is caused by a spirit sometimes, and the only word they have for it in the English translation is sometimes a demon. However, you have to remember, especially in like Lakota and other tribal languages, they may have 25 words for spirit, and we just have spirit, you know? And so that's the closest thing. And how I was taught was it isn't evil. It's not an evil being. It's a kind of like you just said, Luke, about is an entity, a being who's hungry. And you look delicious. Your heart chakra looks yummy. Tastes like watermelon. I don't know. But and the thing is that we can't have it on us. It's like a tick. It's like sucking us dry, but it's a lot more harmful. Well, ticks have Lyme disease, and you want to get it off. And how I handle it in a ceremonial setting, I don't destroy it. I open a portal and send it back to where it came. If I don't know where it came, I have one of my gods or helper spirits take it away and things like that. Um, Luke, one of the things I wanted to bring up tonight is about the giants and things like that, because I know you're waiting for it too, and some of the heathen circles and things, they don't like the giants, and I don't know why. I think the giants are great. But you and I and Ruby Fruits see the world differently than people. We understand, wow, you're a spirit that doesn't have to do as I say. You're a spirit who I can't control and can hurt me. And I respect that and I honor that.
Well,
So tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, let me just say for one that I would not say that I can control any of the spirits long term. I think that's sort of the point. I think that people are very, very hard to control. And when you try to control them too tightly, they don't like it. And that's just people. Gods are big. Gods are very big. They are much bigger than me, and I would not try to control one. Um, Ruby, I at one point saw an like a medieval text that taught you how to summon and bind Oberon to your will. And I was just like, why would you ever be that dumb?
Yeah.
let's just not. But so I guess sort of like transitioning to the topic of monsters, right? Because I think that talking about the Titans, talking about the Jotnar, a lot of the time we start talking about the monsters. And monsters have been like, oh God, there's a whole academic theory about monsters that I am not going to drag y'all through, I promise. Um, uh, but I think that a lot of what goes on is that Christian, the Christian worldview has this very um, black and white duality, right? That's actually not in the original text. That is a wonderful thing called the Manichaean heresy that has like gotten wildly out of control since about 1400. But there's this idea in modern Christianity that God is all good and Satan is all bad, and they're fighting. And the fighting is what is where we are. We're stuck in the fighting, right? Um, and so when people move out of Christianity into paganism, they bring this with them, this understanding that like there are things that are all good and there are things that are all bad. A lot of the time I hear this called lawful and chaotic. So there are lawful spirits and there are chaotic spirits, and they are fighting, and we are stuck in the fighting, and the chaotic spirits are bad and the lawful spirits are good, and we're just going to side with the lawful spirits now. And I'm like, this is just you're this is like taking blue raspberry flavor and calling it blue raspberry flavor part 2. Like it's just the same, it's the same. um but I think that we do get a lot of conflicts in different mythologies that map onto this fairly easily if you don't look at them too close, right? You get this fight between the Titans and the Olympians. Never mind the fact that some of the Titans are good guys. Never mind the fact that some of the Titans uh, are still around, continue to have children, continue to give birth to new Olympians. Like the Titanomachy is the war that happened before the Olympians took the throne. It did not get rid of the Titans. We still remember the Titans, and the movie Remember the Titan. Anyway,
Oh, good Lord.
and the same thing happens when you look at Ragnarok in Norse mythology, right? You get this forces of law, forces of chaos, they fight. Let's not pay attention to the fact that every single one of the Aesir has Jotnar blood.
Yeah.
Let's not pay attention to the fact that lots of these spirits and lots of these conflicts happen because the Aesir are trying to prevent this war, like they are causing it. They are putting people into positions where they are separated from their children, where their children are are bound, where they're trying to unweave fate. Like there's a lot of complications in the myth that don't really hold up to good versus evil. And I think that that's sort of reflecting what we're talking about in this idea of like daemonia, right? The spirits, is that most spirits, I'm not going to say all, because like I believe that the world is big enough so that if you can imagine it, it will exist, right? So there is probably somewhere out there a bad like just a bad thing. I can't come up with it right now, but I'm sure that it exists. But I think
Human. Human.
Yeah, strong argument there. But I think that most spirits are complicated, and either they are complicated in a way that nurtures you to like push through parts of your own understanding and like grow, or they are complicated in a way that challenges you to push through parts of your understanding, that forces you through some things instead of being like, here, we're going to do this gently. That said, I do want to say that everybody has tools that work for them. Everybody has spirit allies that work for them. Because of what I know about how addiction works in the body and the mind, because of what I know about my friends who are in disability studies and MAD studies, I would really caution folks who have like histories of addiction, histories of mental illness. I don't think that that's necessarily something that I would recommend spirit work for. I think that that would be something that I would absolutely recommend a trained professional human being.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because there are ways of getting out of these cycles, and there are ways of getting pushed further in.
Mm-hmm.
And a spirit who will push you further in is not always going to be the one that you need.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things, like I was saying it before, it's like my teachers always said, if you have these things, you cannot do this for type of work. What I didn't say, what they also said was, get counseling, therapy, take some time. It's no big deal, because these type of chaotic primal spirits are not meant to, at least I don't think, they're not meant to be healers, but well, in the traditional sense of, hey, I have a problem, let me conjure a demon to fix my problem. It's kind of understood that if you're not doing deep spiritual work on yourself, ego, and your consciousness, then there's another reason to summon these spirits, and that's power. For
That's definitely
me,
what Aleister Crowley was after.
oh,
He's
absolutely.
after power.
And For me, so this is
In
hard. This
a
is hard.
godlike way, I think, is what Aleister Crowley was looking for, I think.
Well, yeah, we can have a whole show on just him. I actually, when I used to teach Galicia to students, I would actually require that they would read his biography just so they would know here's what happens when you're power hungry. Here's what happens to a very good, powerful, intelligent magician who he thought his ego was balanced, and the spirit showed him otherwise. So one thing I want to say in his defense, that his heroin addiction started like in the like 1915, 1916, where you could get heroin at the drugstore and doctors would prescribe it to you. And so, however, when they said, no, stop, it's bad, he had already had the addiction. So it was hard. And so I will give him that credit.
And addiction, like, again, I want to just really emphasize that addiction is not something that people can will themselves out of.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I kind of want to segue into because of time is ghosts and stuff. And it seems kind of strange. Okay, demons, monsters, and why ghosts? So basically, we're talking about everything that's traditionally scary and dark. There's to me, this is just me. I'm going to own this. There's a difference between an ancestor or a spirit who has passed on and a ghost. You
I
know,
agree.
to me, this is just me. A ghost is the shell, the astral shell. That's the thing that frightens people and things like that. You know, for those of us who work with the ancestors and work with spirits, it feels very enlightening. Even lost spirits who are like, hey, I'm pissed off. I have some unfinished business. I got stuff to do. I'm mad about it. That feels completely different than the spirit that's looks like Uncle Joe, but it's clearly not Uncle Joe. Holy crap, that thing is crazy.
I think with my experience with ghosts, because I actually lived in a haunted house.
Shocking.
It was very scary. Um, I kind of have this idea that the difference between like an ancestral spirit and a ghost is that an ancestral spirit has made a clear choice. They're more enlightened. They know they're dead. They have decided not to. I personally believe in reincarnation. Not everybody does, but if you subscribe to reincarnation, an ancestral spirit is somebody that has made a conscious choice not to reincarnate for whatever reason. And they are interested in being a guide for their family or for others that are close to them. But I think a ghost is not on that level yet, or maybe is in a stuck kind of position where they're so traumatized that they can't get past the fact that they have died. And so as I think some of the hauntings that are so traumatic, definitely mine was traumatic. Just briefly, my experience is that I woke up in my apartment one night and a man was standing over me. And actually I was married at the time, and my husband actually saw this man and went to attack the man because this man was clearly had malevolent intentions towards specifically me. And I personally think that what happened is in the 1970s that this spirit killed his girlfriend or wife and then killed himself shortly after, because there was another spirit in the apartment that had long red hair. So I think that we activated these spirits because we looked so much like them. And so we reactivated them. Although the person that we took the apartment over definitely wanted to leave that apartment very, very quickly. So I believe that there was some very dangerous spirit activity there. But this person, he had not gotten over his trauma. And actually, I think the woman was also trapped in that trauma as well, because she was there as well. So I would say, this is just my own personal category, is that a ghost is someone that is a deceased person who is traumatized, whereas an ancestral spirit is someone that has been able to navigate through any trauma that they've had.
I think you're both right.
I do too.
So heathenry and a lot of other models actually have this idea of a soul having many parts, right? Like I am kind of made up of my body and kind of made up of my mind and kind of made up of the ancestors that came before me and kind of made up of like how I've been growing and made up of a few other things, right? And when I die, the agreement that all of these things have to work together is over, right? And so it's very possible for my soul to go a whole bunch of different places, right? Part of me is going to be attached to my family. I have no plans on having kids, so good luck to that part of me. But part of me is going to be attached to my family line and is going to be like ancestral, right? Part of me is going to be more the like personality that I was this lifetime. Part of me might get cycled through. And so I really like that model. And it's different depending on the culture. People have different names for these spirit or these parts of the soul, and they will say that they do different things. But I like thinking that there is more than one version of the meanness, right? More than one part, because it helps me explain some of the spirit stuff that I experience now. And it makes me not as worried about what happens to me afterwards, because yeah, sure. Yeah, all of it. Let's do all of it.
I like that, all of it.
Right. But so ghosts for me are some part of you. And some parts, sometimes I think you're right, Chris. I what I'm hearing in yours is like you did something really loud right here, and that got like etched into the walls. And if you touch the walls at the right time, that etching comes out, right? And Ruby, I'm also hearing like personality sticking around, like people not just in that moment of trauma, but like sort of like their intent, their spirit moving through, right? I hear that in a lot of like the haunting stories about like this guy just seems to be around, like he doesn't like wander back and forth in one hall or anything. He lives here, I guess. Uh and to a certain extent, and like heathenry has spirit, like you die and you become a fairy, you become one of the people who live around here. You die and you become sometimes a draugr, so like a monstrous thing that still lives in your body and can move your body even though you're dead. You can become all these sorts of different things, and only some of them are problems.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them are just things that you be.
Things that you be.
So I don't know if when I was like, okay, so demons, sure, can be a bad time. Yeah. Monsters, usually not as bad as they're made out to be.
Right.
Who's picking on ghosts? Like,
Well, it also depends upon what's happening. Because, like, for example, I know you're going to be shocked to hear this, but I get lots of people who are like, "Hey, Chris, I got a ghost. Come fix it." I know you're shocked to hear that, but that's what I do sometimes. And the easiest ones are the ones that are like, "Man, I was supposed to cross over. That didn't happen." Okay, well, let's fix that. That's easy breezy. So the ones that are a little more challenging of, I'm not going anywhere until I finish my business. The interesting thing is like, you know, for older people, sometimes it's like time kind of stopped. And they have the same hair as they did in the 70s and the same 70s glasses. Well, when you're dead and confused, guess what? You may still think it's 1983 when you died in 1983. So it's interesting how it's all. I feel like the theme of the show is also depends on upon your perspective. Um, but that situation is also doable. The hard one, the one I'm like, damn it, this is gonna be a minute. When a person is suffering from mental illness, here's how I have experienced it as a spirit form. Their spirit is a spark with the divine. It is, no matter what happened, you know, because I do. It's very complicated, but I don't think people who have mental illness. I mean, there's something in their brains that just got firing correctly, and they hurt themselves and sometimes others. But they still have the spark of the divine. However, when they die, and that pure spark, whatever, goes to the ancestors or wherever happens to it, there's still this consciousness, there's still this astral self, there's still this etheric self. And so if you've ever gone to um, a place where something bad happened, a murder or an institution, and you felt the spirits, it feels dark. To me, it doesn't feel like Satan, evil, gross. It feels like stuck, trapped, thick. It feels very angry, but you know, and one of the hard things is that those of us who work with healing energies, we're empaths. We have empathy. We can feel it, and even if we can't connect per se, we can say, I can kind of understand how that happened and have empathy, right? In this situation, our brains don't work the same. They just don't. And it's really hard. And so go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I want to push back a little, Chris,
Sure.
because like I know a lot of folks who have mental illnesses of varying degrees, right? Who identify as mad and are proud of it. Who are differently embodied in the world because of the way that their minds work, right? And that is not, in their experience, as they have articulated it to me, a thing that uh, keeps them from interacting with the world. Rather, a lot of the times what I hear is that the world has been formed to keep them out. So like we have a society that for hundreds of years, if you were different,
Right.
and different meant anything from depressed to gay to uh, too interested in books, um, would stick you in an institution and abuse you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there was systemic abuse.
Right.
There are still a systemic abuse in our society today, um, in these institutions, in the way that people who show up differently are treated, both by society and by the people around them. Um, so when you're talking about like institutions that feel stuck, um, that that I would expect the same in prisons. I would expect the same in
Absolutely.
like slave quarters, right?
Absolutely. And let me clarify, I'm not talking about if you have a mental illness of some sort, this is how it always feels. I'm talking in extreme cases. I'm talking about serial killers. I'm talking about people who are actively violent and cannot control it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, however, here's the double-edged sword, I guess, is that to speak what you were talking about, a lot of people have some, I mean, we all have mental things. I don't believe in 100% sanity. I don't think that's a thing. I think we all have things. We're all different. We all think differently. Because I know I react to certain things I probably shouldn't have. But that being said, I do know that especially before, um, if you had some mental things happening to you, if you went into an institution, it got worse. It did not get better. It got worse. Um, and it becomes complicated.
I'm sorry. I
No.
wanted to add too that just because you have trauma and you have mental illness or you have, I think that ghosts are created from a variety of different variables that maybe are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any one reason why a ghost is still within our plane. I think that there's like this vast, maybe the moon has to be in a particular position and you have to die at a certain hour and you have to have this something that has to be perfect for everything to align for the ghost to be created. I don't know what those variables are, but I think it's vast, and so I think that we shouldn't worry about every murderer becoming
right.
Every murder victim becoming a ghost. I think that there's variables that go into that, and there's really no way to predict who becomes a ghost and who reincarnates or whose soul fractions off and goes to different places. I mean, I think that it's unknowable.
I will say this, and we can each wrap up a little bit. How I approach every circumstance is the first thing. I don't say I'm a ghost hunter because I'm not. I think I'm a healer, and I want to have compassion. I try to approach things in a place of non-judgment, meaning all this chaos can fucking be happening. The homeowners or whoever can be very scared. Let me find out what's happening. I mean, never even tell people, oh, I'll handle it for you. I always say, let me check it out for you. Let me see what's happening, because maybe it isn't even the spirit's fault. Maybe it's human fault. A lot of times it is human fault. But I think with all situations, even the demons, the monsters, and the ghosts, if you approach things in a non-judgment place and try to have compassion, but also have some boundaries too. You don't want to sure possess me. Have boundaries but be gentle at the same time, because I don't want to be cliche and like, oh, act nice, but if we approach things with the healer's mindset, with compassion, and say, okay, let me figure this out, and then we can go from there. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
What you got, Luke? I see something.
Oh no, I'm just thinking.
Your hamster where is going?
Yeah, no, we can see that.
I know. Anything else before we wrap up? No. Okay. So now they're quiet.
I mean, I think that the thing that's standing out to me here is that as we interact with folks, whether or not those folks have bodies, right? The most useful tool in our tool belt is trying to understand them, understand who they are, understand what they want, understand that they are complicated and what those complications are. Because we, as humans, like telling ourselves simple stories. Simple stories make things easy. We know what we have to do next. And they are always lies. And as we try to interact with others for our good, for their good, whatever it is, we owe ourselves more than lies.
Hmm. Wow, look at you. Ruby, do you have any closing words of wisdom?
Oh, because I really like what Luke just said.
Yeah, me too. That was awesome.
More than lies.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. I love this topic. I can do this for 18 more hours. I love it. I should write a book about this. What do you think? Kidding. Um, um, by the way, you're gonna laugh. I actually have a book for coming out in October about this exact same topic. But anyway, about the ghost part, and I'll do the demon thing another day. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and saying hi and spending some time with us. If you haven't checked out our other episodes, we've actually got quite the collection now. You can just Google Mystic Chat or go on YouTube and put Mystic Chat or look for me, Chris Allen. Um,
And
and
you can also go to Fairy Fortunes on YouTube,
yes,
a playlist of the Mystic Chat series, so you can find it there as well.
absolutely. And we're also on iTunes and we're on Spotify. I love saying that, sounds so official. But thank you for joining us, and we shall see you next time.